Hey there, folks. So last episode we added in the various different skeletal mesh components for our NPCs. Let's bring over our third person blueprint here. You can see we've got multiple different mesh available for our character. This episode, what I want to do is start working on the functionality so we can actually equip and unequip things. So, excuse me, my chair is very noisy. So, to do that though, what we need, we have set it up in the class. I'm just trying to explain things a little bit. What we need is to go to the event graph here quickly just so I can show this in a blueprint. So, skeletal mesh have a runtime feature called set skeletal mesh asset. And what this does is this allows you to assign a new skeletal mesh to a pre-existing slot, or actually let me undo that. If you leave it blank, it actually just removes the mesh. So I'm going to undo that. So to go about that though, what we need to do is add that to our NPC class, or sorry, our character class. So I'm going to close out of the editor here and we're going to hop back into Visual Studio. And with that, what we're going to want to do is add a function towards the bottom. Well, actually at the bottom because it's going to be a public function, so everything's available. And I'm going to call this set this as a bool, so we can basically say yes or no, this worked. Bool equip. Trying to think, how do I want to? I'm trying to think. Equip item. So now it's going to need to take a couple of inputs. Well, actually one input ultimately, and that is going to be our TF item or item base equipable item. Sorry, equipable item base. So to do that, I'm going to open up the source file. Actually, no, header file. No, source file will work for this because I just need the class name. So we have uEquipable item base. And in the input parameters for the function, we're just going to put class uEquipable item base pointer item. And I've mentioned in previous episodes, but this class is a forward declaration, and that's just basically saying to the header file, look, we're going to be passing in a class data type as the input, but you don't need to know about it. And honestly, the header file for the character class doesn't. So now we've got that, we're going to right click and quick action create definition. And in here, this is where we're going to need to do a few different things. So first things first, we're going to look at our header file. I should have opened the header file for our equipable item. So we have our slot type, which we have accessible to us through the get slot type, and our skeletal mesh, which is accessible to through our get character mesh. So first thing we're going to want to do here is do a switch, if I could type, on item get slot type. Oh, and this isn't going to work because we are missing that include. So up here at the top, include items equipable item base. And that should get rid of, yep. So the reason we need that include is obviously so it has all the information it needs about these functions. Get slot type. So now we've got that. We have our slot types we need to look at here. Apparently I minimized that. So we have head, torso, hand, leg, feet, weapon, backpack. So what I'm going to do for ease, I'm just going to copy that over. And just follow these in order. And I'm just going to fast forward through this part. Alright, so the basics of the switch statement are set up there. What I'm going to do though, just quickly, expand switch as new slot types are added. All right, so let's make sure that's clear. Equipment slot types are added. So this note is, as I mentioned in the previous episodes, I'm not 100% if this is going to be my exhaustive list on, excuse me, all the visible equipment on the actor. I might want to add a belt or a couple other items like some belt accessories, things like that. So, well, now we've got this. Well, default, we obviously know this one's going to be logger, get instance, add message, error level, warning, and then break. And the reason, for anyone who's not sure, these error, like this logger is custom logging I add, and it puts the logging in a very specific folder, and this error level sort of adds a preface to it so we know what sort of error it is. Unknown slot type. And then what I'm going to do, so we don't actually accidentally hit that, I'm going to just throw a break there for safety. Actually, we don't need a break. This can be a return false because it doesn't do anything it needed to do there. This is also a catch-all return just in case something else fails. So at this point, we have a couple options on how we could go about. We could go through and put in all the code here, backpack mesh, set skeletal mesh asset. Actually won't set skeletal mesh because we need that reinit pose. We could go through about this and go like item get character mesh. I put that as a skeletal mesh component. Oh, I did. Whoops. Okay, I'm pretty sure that's what needed. And then equipable item base source. There we go. So I think that was my mistake. I was getting carried away there. And this should fix that error. Yeah, there we go. So we could do that. Or where we go through and then it would be like item, apply additional information, things like that. Because as we mentioned, it's going to be either a clothing item or a weapon, and they're going to have certain side effects. Like there's going to be some thermal protection, there's going to be potentially movement speed penalties, things like that. The other option, which is actually what I'm going to go for, and it's going to be, some people may be a little confused with the approach, but it's going to be creating functions for each of these. And the whole reason for doing that is the KISS method. Keep it stupid simple. I prefer that. I know there's two different ways. There's keep it stupid simple and keep it simple stupid. Keep it stupid simple doesn't imply whoever you're talking to might be stupid. Either way, the whole reason for that is it's a methodology I like to follow where the logic in a function performs one action. And this here, it's basically going, okay, what item is it? Okay, that's the function. And then we have functions for various different things here. So to do that, we're going to have a backpack, a foot, hand, head, leg, torso, and weapon. So these do not need to be public functions, actually. Oh, and I missed this. U function blueprint callable, because we want this to be exposed to blueprints because it's something we may want to use through our UI code or blueprinting. But so with that, what I'm going to do here is add in a new region, pragma region equip functions, pragma end region. And in here, we're going to go bool. And again, these are all going to be Booleans because they're either going to succeed or they're going to fail. And we can just use that as a straight pass through here. We'll replace this break with a return set backpack item. So set backpack item helps if I add a space in there. And that's going to be, and actually, I mentioned this previously, we're going to copy this, get rid of that, and we're just going to put the forward declaration right at the top because we're going to be using this a huge number of times. Okay, so I'm going to copy that, and then we have bool set torso item, bool set leg item, bool set hand item, bool set weapon. And there's 7 of those in there. 1, 2, head. What am I missing? So head, torso, hands. Missing head. Bool set head item. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Backpack, torso, leg, hand, weapon, head. Head, torso, feet. There we go. Okay, so again, just like I was saying, the whole purpose of this is that KISS methodology where we try to limit it to limit a function to a single purpose wherever possible. Because then that way you know, okay, that's all this function does. It doesn't need to have a huge number of different functions. And the other thing is with this, and I had mentioned it was in a comment regarding the stat line component and putting, actually I'm just going to bring that up quick actually, because it was a valid question. And it was why am I using tick for the excuse me here. Why is this getting put here in the tick, which is called every frame? For my personal use, just to explain, and I understand it's dragging the episode on, but the reason I'm putting it here is I want the degree of accuracy that this gives me. Because if one frame takes 10 milliseconds and then the next frame takes 15 milliseconds, both of those frames are going to have the exact same impact on the regeneration or decay of your stats. Now, a timer, in theory, has that exact same functionality. You set it to say, okay, this timer is going to run every second. And it should, in theory, run every second. However, there is some minor bias in there, plus or minus, like a couple of frames, depending on how long it takes to get to that particular tick function. Timer function. So that was something I was willing to ignore to start with because I want this level of accuracy. But if for some reason this becomes too much of a resource hog because the stat tick is just consuming too much because there's too many actors with stat lines that are ticking, I can move that over to a function. A timer function. And that's quite easy. We just tell the timer to call this. And all we have to do is make a minor code change to say this isn't an input parameter. It's just like 1 or whatever we decide the timer interval is. So then with that, all I have to do is say, okay, well, I'm just going to call tick stats. And then we could just have actually wouldn't even need to do that. We would just have to say, oh, we have a timer value of 1. So every second we're just going to pass in 1 every time. And that would be a very quick way to iterate over that code, make that change. And then you could go through and adjust. Like if that works, then you can go through and adjust all your other code after the fact. So, but anyway, so like huge side tangent there for what should be a fairly simple thing. Going back to this here. So we now have all of our functions to call. And with that, what we're going to be doing here, it's fairly simple. And initially, these are very basic functions because we don't want, we don't have a ton of logic, a ton of other information to put in. So I'm just going to make these all return true because everything is going to succeed. This is just going to be a case of backpack mesh, set skeletal mesh, item, get character mesh. And that's going to be quite simple and all we need to do for this one. And then this is going to be torso mesh, same thing. Leg mesh, same thing. And so on and so forth for all of these. Now this is also where I'm actually going to skip the weapon one because that's a little more involved. As I mentioned, I call it hat mesh or head mesh? Hat mesh. Feet mesh sounds almost like fetish. Anyway, so with the weapon one, we're going to leave that one for now, but that's because the way I plan on doing weapons is it's actually going to be attaching a blueprint basically to a socket in the player's hand or to their belt, depending. Still need to figure that one out. So weapons are still going to be a little ways down the line. But all this is doing here is going to be assigning a mesh. Now, there's one thing that's missing with this, and it's going to cause an exception the first time this scenario occurs. This does not account for removing an item. So what I would think to do, and I may change this process, but is valid. Is change it up to be this. So we're checking if it's a valid item. If it is, we're putting in the character mesh. If not, we're clearing the mesh. So I'm going to quickly change that on all of these. Now there is quite a few different methodologies you could do here. You could be like if not is valid item hand mesh set skeletal mesh null pointer. And then return true. Now these all only have return trues because there could be a case of certain items have certain requirements. Like I'm just trying to think what would be a good example of that. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that would be valid within the scope of my project. But it would be something like, say, your fantasy games where, like, oh, you need to have a minimum strength of 20 to be able to equip this sword, things like that. So within this logic, you would add that. but quickly just put these through. All right, so now we've added that in. Let's just do a quick build, and I'll talk while this builds. But so with this, like I said, there's going to obviously be in here additional things that need to be done. Right now, this is just the visual aspect of updating the appearance of your character, or of the character, because this could technically apply to AI. Like I'm wanting to hopefully get AI to a point where there's AI humans that sort of walk around like, oh, it's freezing cold, there's a coat over there, I'm gonna go put it on. Things like that. Now, whether I actually ever get that far, who's to know? But that is sort of my end goal, and why I'm doing all of this in the character base class, because as I mentioned before, reusing functionality, and that's the whole reason for all the derived classes within the items, is anything that is going to be used by the multiple child classes should be put in the parent. So like in here, I want any NPC as well as the player to, any humanoid NPC. I'll clarify that one because you're not going to have a bear put a coat on. But any humanoid NPC should be able to go put a coat on, and as well as the player. So here's the functionality for that. So, sorry, I was having to drink coffee there. So this build succeeded, so all of this is working. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to launch into the editor, and we're just going to do, it's where I'm going to end off this episode after we figure it out, but I'm just going to go through and add like a keybind that changes the mesh between the characters, I don't know, his hat, between two things. And we'll just use that to set that up. So we'll have to create 2 equipable items, and then we'll have those 2. So with that though, just because this build is going to take a minute, I'm going to pause the video, and I will be back as soon as we are in the editor. Alright, so we're back in the editor here. I'm going to quickly pull over the content browser. We're going to go to our project, files, blueprints, and we're going to go into dev, because this is just, again, we're just doing some test items. So right click, blueprint class, equip, if I could spell, item. What am I missing there? I know what I'm missing. I just realized, completely forgot from last episode. We're a couple episodes back. So if you ever run into this issue where you've created a class and you can't create a blueprint for it, it's right here, U class. If you notice, I'll hop back in here quickly. We go blueprint class, and I go item. You can see we have item base, consumable, and junk item, but we don't have equipable item. So if we go back to Visual Studio and we just take a quick look in the header file for these, so we have item base. Oh, no, maybe not. What am I missing? Junk item, blueprintable. Yeah, okay, and okay, weapon, consumable. Okay, sorry, yeah, no. The reason why item base is showing up is it's the parent, but if I check, sorry, that threw me off. I just want to check item base, it doesn't let us, but if we go and select consumable item, it gives us that select option. So the reason for that is this is missing from that U class decorator, the blueprintable attribute. So I'm going to just quickly go through actually, and apparently I left my phone on right next to my microphone. Let me just turn that off. But yeah, so if you add blueprintable into the U class at the top for your items, that's going to allow you to create a blueprint from it. So with that, I do need to stop the editor, rebuild the project, and hop back in. So I'm going to pause the video again, and I will be right back as soon as we're back in the editor with these quick changes compiled in. Actually, make sure they're all in there. All right, so we're back in the editor, and let's give this a second try and see if that change actually fixed my issue. Come on, content browser. There we go. Okay, so blueprint item, and there you can see we have equipable item, clothing item. We don't have all of them because I didn't go through and add it into every single one, just because, well, weapons and stuff aren't ready yet. So we're going to go equipment item base, actually clothing item, sorry. And this is going to be dev underscore BP hat 01. And nice thing with Epic and Unreal Engine, because it's got that 01, which is a number of indicator, you can just duplicate and that changes to 02. Open both of these up quick. And I'm just going to move the content browser off the screen. A for ease and B so it's there when I grab the hat mesh. And open up 2. And there we go. And then let's grab the... where are they? Mega. There we go. Mesh and parts. And we're using the bowler hat right now, so I'm going to use 2 different ones. I'm going to use the mouse and what other one? The pot. So the mouse will be for hat 2 and the pot will be for hat 1. So now that we've done that, we're just going to open up our third person blueprint quickly. All right, there we go. So in here, as you can see right now by default, we have our, I don't want to call it a bowler hat, cowboy hat. So I'm going to add just a temporary boolean in here. So B hat flip flop. And it's going to just be that there. So in our event graph, we already have some bindings in here. We have 7, we have 9 for our save. I'm going to put this on 4 just because it's far enough away from everything else. And then go flip flop. Grab this, and then we're also going to set this, and we're going to go not. Oh, no, that's not what we want. We just want a branch for this, sorry. And this will cause it to flip back and forth between that. And we'll go branch. So that's an if statement. And we're going to do this to our hat mesh. Set skeletal mesh. Asset. True. Duplicate that to false. And then, I'm trying to think. Probably need these as variables. Hat 1. Trying to remember how to do this. Object reference. Yeah, object reference, sorry. So hat 1 is going to be true, and hat 2. Let's get these in here quick. Do a quick compile. Okay. And then I'm going to play in selected viewport. And I believe V is our... oh, something broke. Oh, byte trigger. I have to look into that. Okay, so obviously you can see our camera position is pretty bad. We're inside our head mesh, so we'll need to change things here. But if we hit V, is it V? Oh, I have that off by default. Let's go. Player. No, character. No, won't let me change it there, so let's find it in here. Active. There we go. Okay, and then we hit 4. Oh, it's not working. That is... Yeah, the object's not valid. That's why. All right, well, this episode is running a little long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this episode here. But next episode, I will continue on with this process here just to go through and figure out getting that to actually work. So as always, though, folks, thanks for watching. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, suggestions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Or hop over on the Discord if you have a larger question that you want some help with. Thanks again, and I will see you in the next episode.